Welcome to our session on our Big P session, promoting partnerships. Preliminary education preparation programs provide practical support via induction participation. I got as many P's as I could in that title, just couldn't make them all that way. You have been muted upon arrival, so if you're going to speak, you will need to unmute yourself. And as they come in, I'll be continuing to mute folks. So we're going to go ahead and get started, even though we know we have a few people who will be joining us in the next few minutes as they finish up their lunch and come on board. Executive Order N6620, which has now been followed by Senate Bill 820, allowed preliminary candidates to obtain a preliminary teaching or a preliminary administrative credential before they completed their required performance assessment. The new deadline for them to complete their TPA or their CALVA APA aligns with the expiration date on their preliminary credential. Since the candidates have completed and exited their preliminary program, however, support responsibilities shifted to the candidate's induction program. However, some of our preliminary programs were reticent to let their candidates go as the candidate's success were important to them. It helped to achieve a win-win so that both programs could win, and ultimately the candidate could win. Today, I've asked 3 of those reticent programs to share with us their thinking, their plan, and some of them, their execution. What is their ongoing support for preliminary candidates preparing their performance assessments while still in an induction environment? And I've asked them to prepare their thoughts around some basic questions. So the first question was, why was it important for your program and its personnel to continue to provide support for CASC candidates who have requirements yet to finish? Then the second question I asked of them was, what kinds of support are you providing candidates? Are you providing cohort meetings, one-on-one tutorials, readings, critiquings, checklists, what? And considering that these candidates are now full-time school employees, how often and when are these supports being provided? And then finally, what barriers or boosts have you encountered as you support these candidates? And then any other lessons that they wanted to share. So we hope we have left enough time at the end to open the mic up and have discussion with you and your good ideas as well. But we're going to have our 3 speakers speak for our first 20 or 30 minutes or so. So I'd first like to introduce to you from UCLA, Dede London. It's like London without the D. So Dede is a fieldwork supervisor and instructor in UCLA's Principal Leadership Institute. The program grants a master's degree as well as the completion of the coursework that is required for the California Tier 1 administrative credential. And she also coordinates and coaches the leadership support program in our CLEAR programs. Our second speaker is Dr. Mike Zolowitz from CSU, California State University, Bakersfield. He has served as a principal, an assistant principal, and a teacher in a diverse, comprehensive public high school where he emphasized literacy, critical thinking, and inclusive in communities. Life's journeys has taken him to Cal State University, Bakersfield, where he now works to develop future educational leaders through both the administrative credentialing and the doctoral programs. Not too long ago, he indulged his twin passions for history and fast food by stopping at the site of the first McDonald's while driving home from a Cal APA training session. And then thirdly, Melody Thorson is entering her 22nd year in education. She has spent her career as a classroom teacher, a site principal, and is now the Director of Leadership and Learning Collaborative for the Placer County Office of Education. Mel oversees and teaches in the PASC program, as well as manages and supports the CASC program for her geographic area. When not developing and supporting aspiring leaders in education, Mel spends her time working her second job on her husband's wood-fired pizza food truck, Bella Familia Wood-Fired Pizza. There's no question as to why her 4 grandchildren, who call Grandpa Goopa, would tell you that their favorite food in the world is Goopa's Pizza. So thank you all for joining us. We appreciate the time that you are and expertise you are willing to share with us. So in the order that I introduced you, I'm going to let you have some time to speak. Our first speaker will be Dede London from UCLA. And they do not have current people in the CAST program, but have plans. So she's going to share with us her thinking on how they are going to support those folks. So Dede.
Thank you, Gay. I should say, first of all, that our preliminary and clear programs have very small cohorts compared to some other programs. So we've had as few as 12 to 18 participants going through each year at UCLA. Also, up to this point, we've only had one person who did not complete, and that person is working at a charter school and has not returned to us as of yet. However, when we admit our students into our preliminary program, we commit to them, and we commit to supporting them throughout and beyond the program to complete their work. So for us, it's a moral obligation, and we tell them we'll never let you go, meaning that we'll support our alumni in their careers even after they leave us. We'll have to figure out exactly how that's going to look in the future because we haven't really been encountered with this particular situation yet, but we do have a few ideas, and we are dedicated to making sure it happens. Some of our CLEAR program coaches also work in the capacity of fieldwork supervisor in the preliminary program. So what we foresee is assigning students who haven't completed Cal APA requirements to those particular supervisors as coaches in the CLEAR program. In the CLEAR program, our priority is going to have to be to get the Cal APA process completed, even if we have to adjust the normal sequence of our assignments and our induction plan to make sure that these participants are successful and get completed. The supports that we provide in our preliminary program will be offered to those students who have not completed by the CLEAR program. And they include one-on-one tutorials. We have Saturday classes for our fieldwork students where we work a lot on Cal APA requirements. And, that looks like cohort meetings. It can be one-on-one tutorials. We do peer editing, review, critiquing, taking close looks together at the rubrics, and several iterations of that. So in the future, we probably will be having our CAST participants join us when necessary for different cycles of Cal APA in those Saturday meetings that we have. We found it very valuable that we provide a space and time for their writing and peer reading, especially this year with the distance learning. Left on their own, it just doesn't seem that they get as much done as when we come together as a group, where people have devoted time on Saturdays to support each other and to get support from their fieldwork supervisors as well. So I can foresee that we would utilize the same time for people who had not finished moving into the Tier 2. Hypothetically, since we accept students from outside of UCLA to our Tier 2 program, it could be possible that we would get larger numbers of people in who haven't completed the Cal APA. And one of the challenges for us then would be whether or not we would need to add personnel for support. We have two coaches in our tier 2 who work in the preliminary program as well and are very familiar and have gone to trainings and other workshops around the Cal APA. If we had more students in the future who had not completed and we needed more staff members to provide support for them, then it would be a financial challenge, of course, for the university, as we'd have to hire more people. So that's something that I hope doesn't happen, but I have to say that it's something that's on our minds that could possibly come up, because having completed the Cal APA is not a part of our application process, or requirement, I should say. So I hope that's helpful in giving those of you who have not reached that point as we haven't, to think in advance about what are some things that you may have to encounter, or some problems that you may have to solve in the future. So thank you.
I was on mute and had the window hidden. So thank you very much, Dede. I appreciate your thoughts. And then moving over to Mike Solowich from Cal State University, Bakersfield. Can't say that right today. I apologize. Mike.
Usually it's my name that has the pronunciation difficulties, so that's fine. Well, it's a pleasure to be here today, everybody, and I want to talk a little bit before I get into the 4 questions that I was asked to address. I want to talk a little bit about Cal State Bakersfield and kind of our environment and where we serve a little bit, so you have a little sense of where I'm coming from. So we are at California State University Bakersfield, a preliminary services program only. So I've had my hands full the last 3 years, 2.5 years, adopting the Cal APA and bringing the program up to speed in terms of those requirements without thinking about the induction program too much. I am pleased to see that there's a representative from the Kern County Superintendent of Schools here, who I've worked with, and KCSOS really does most of our induction programs. So Malaika, I guess what I'm about to share might be news to you, so I'm glad you're here. It saves us a meeting. So where I'm coming from in terms of my participation here is I kind of thought that as I've talked with people around the state and such, and other conferences and things, that Cal APA has been very much a preliminary program requirement. And I kind of had this sense that maybe some in the induction program might be like, wow, that's great that the preliminary has a Cal APA, glad we don't have to deal with that. But now that we do, I think there's a greater need for understanding that. And so I'm hoping just in the next few minutes to share a little bit about what I've learned in the last few semesters about the Cal APA, and hope that it might provide some insight for those looking for a little bit more some ideas as to what the Cal APA involves. At any rate, as you may be aware, Bakersfield is kind of a rugged town. We're routinely listed as one of the poorest urban areas in the country, along with some of our sister Central Valley cities such as Fresno. It's not just that incomes are low, but also systematic poverty. Once people fall into poverty, it's very, very difficult to get out. Only 20% of the population have a bachelor's degree or higher. Only about 7% of the students that we serve, well, actually, most of the students we serve don't already have a master's, but within our community, only about 7% have a master's or higher. So the fact that somebody is in our program to begin with is a pretty significant accomplishment. 75% of students at CSUB are first-generation college-going students as well. So I think this really gets into question number 1 a little bit, because I really see a profound moral and ethical responsibility to serving our students, especially because it is so difficult, and the people who are coming to us really are kind of in a top tier of accomplishment just managing to get into our program. They're already in the top 10% of the most educated people in our area. And so I really want to support them in their leadership journeys, you know, to improve not just their lives, but also the impact that they will have in taking the skills that they have into their school communities, and the potential ripple effect that this would have through an entire community. 63% of our students are underrepresented minorities. One of our students last spring, on her graduation picture, I said, take a graduation picture and I'll put it on our Instagram page. And she had decorated her cap with a statement, "Daughter of Agricultural Workers." So again, that gets to just the economic mobility that our program promises, and I hope to deliver on for our students. We also only have about 30 candidates, and those candidates are split between our main campus in Bakersfield itself, and then we have about 15 candidates at our satellite campus in the Antelope Valley, which is actually in the Los Angeles area. So we do have those two campuses. And I've said a lot about kind of the challenges here, the poverty, the education levels, but interestingly for our program, I would say at least 25% of our candidates in our program are pursuing their second postgraduate degree. A lot of them already have a master's degree. Some of them even have doctorates and are coming back to us. This is really shocking to me, considering all the statistics that I've already provided. But I think what happens is they get a doctorate and then they realize, wait, I actually want to be a principal, but I need the credentials, so they come back to our program. And then when they realize that getting a second master's is only a few classes in addition to their credential, they're pretty happy to do that. So that's kind of the context that I'm working in. And why I see it's important to support CAS students, who haven't completed their preliminary requirements already. I've touched on that a little bit. I really see my mission as developing effective and equity-driven educational leaders for tomorrow. And once somebody has overcome the many challenges and barriers to actually just get into my program, particularly from our communities, I want to see it through. I want to make sure that their time, their energy to this point, their effort, their investment, because many of them have taken out student loans already and such, is not wasted, that they can capitalize on that. And therefore, I see it as a moral and ethical responsibility to do what I can to support them in seeing them get that credential and a second master's degree, or their first master's degree, as the case might be as well. And as I've already alluded to, I think one of the things that attracted me to the university in the first place was not just to impact a community through being like a principal or possibly a superintendent, but to impact multiple communities by the development of effective and equity-driven leadership. And so again, I see that that my work has a broader ethical and moral responsibility. So what am I doing to support candidates? Honestly, a lot of what I do already in the preliminary program is already embedded into our program. And so at this point, I'm really hoping that many of our candidates, all of our candidates even, are not going to need to do the CalAPA in their induction program, but can actually finish it through our program. So again, I'm seeing the KCSOS is kind of nodding like, yes, that's a great idea. Let's make sure that happens. But in the event that that doesn't, and I could see a few scenarios, like one of our candidates just told me over the weekend that she herself has tested positive for COVID. I could see a situation related to like cycle 3, where if school districts are not doing any sort of face-to-face or screen-to-screen instruction, that's going to be a real problem in terms of completing the requirements for cycle 3. So we're not out of the woods yet, but I am hopeful that many of our candidates can complete their program within this. So some of the things that we're doing, I do look at the 3 major elements of teaching, which is instruction, the curriculum, instruction, and assessment. One of the things that I've very intentionally done is taken the CalAPA rubrics and the essential questions associated with those rubrics and have converted them into formative assessments. So I'm using the CalAPA itself as the the curriculum. And we are allowed to do that. You are allowed to use the rubrics and ask questions without running afoul of the CTC's acceptable support guidelines. So I've taken advantage of that sort of situation. As we use the rubrics, we do emphasize level 3. So there are 5 points on the rubrics. We emphasize level 3 as kind of our program guide. I think level 3 is a solid indicator of administrative competence in the areas that are assessed, while also respecting the fact that they all have regular daytime jobs and many of them have families as well. So to come out and say you need to get a 5, that's a lot. And certainly they're welcome to. I'll offer support towards a 5. But in terms of our program expectations, we're pretty happy with 3. By the way, if you break down the rubrics, you know, there are 22 rubrics across the 3 cycles. And within those, the level 3 itself, if you break down each individual element, you're talking somewhere between 80 and 100 discrete points of knowledge and skills that candidates have to demonstrate to just earn a 3 on the Cal APA. So that's pretty substantive, and we're pretty happy with that. I do have formative assessments. They mainly take the form of journals. And I like to use the Cal APA rubric guiding questions themselves and tweak them just a little bit, and then have students write journals, 3 to 5 pages. Answering the question. Then I'll also ask them if they're supporting documentation to provide that, mainly so that I can see that they have it. Like in cycle 2, you need to have an agenda for each of your meetings. So I'll ask them to turn in their agenda, or what's a sample student work that you might be using. Again, mainly just to see that they have it. We did have a few candidates last year who had to redo their Cal APA because they didn't turn in all the required supporting documentation. So I've tightened up on that a little bit.
And minutes, agendas and minutes.
10 minutes, am I done?
No, and minutes. You said they have to turn in their agendas.
Oh,
they have to turn
minutes.
Agendas
yes.
and minutes.
And minutes. There's quite a bit. And again, you can read the Cal APA cycle assessment guides and see, you know, what exactly is required there. But just, I think a lot of this is like checking boxes. Do you have the required support? Have you written the journal? Have you I guess one of the other assessment tools that I'm really into at the moment is something called critical questions. So what I've done is taken those Cal APA rubrics, starting with level 3, and I've looked at each individual statement and rewrote it into a question. Can you show me where you discussed ... Can you show me where you talked about ... And so this becomes essentially a sort of a checklist of feedback. So as they write their journals, I can then plug these questions in for things that I'm not seeing. And that's kind of a cue to the candidate, like maybe you haven't really discussed this, or one of the things I talk about in assessor training is looking for the gold nuggets, you know, like the gold nuggets. So I'll tell them, you might have it, but it might be maybe more of a flake, you know, a gold flake. So could you develop it a little bit more to help me understand more? Another key instructional strategy is we have a lot of peer, or assessment strategy is we have a lot of peer feedback meetings. So we'll bring the candidates together and have them share samples of their work. We do this twice for each cycle as separate meetings outside of class, and there's some work inside class that we do as well. So if I did have somebody who needed additional support next year out of our program, I could easily invite them to those meetings and add them in so that they can get that peer feedback. And that, of course, assumes that we've given them training, which we do, on how to use the rubrics itself. So we've got that. There was also a point in the questioning about how often we give feedback. It's at least every 2 weeks. So their assignments due at least every 2 weeks. A lot of it, again, is online or interactive through the journals, or they might upload samples of their videos. You know, I think Cal APA requires like 5 minutes. So I'll say record all of your meetings, and I want to see like 10-minute long samples. So, so again, I can see that they're authentically addressing the issues, and I can give them a little bit of feedback, like your camera angle maybe isn't the greatest, you know, or we can't hear anybody in your video. You know, there's some very basic things that we can check, or I can check through that. I think I'm running out of time, so I will kind of speed things up here. Some barriers or boosts. I'd say one of the biggest barriers that I've seen is there's a great diversity of leadership capacity from our candidates and also in our schools. I still meet with principals and start talking about leading communities of practice or even data analysis. And, you know, I kind of get that's a cool theory you got there, professor, sort of look. I need to be very sensitive to there's some candidates who they look at this and their principals look at this, their site mentors look at it and go, wow, yeah, we're right there, we're doing it. And there's others where there's a lot of intentional instruction that needs to occur. And I do provide support through some of the textbooks I use, such as the Data Coach's Guide to Instructional Improvement. I call it the Love et al. Book because it's written by Love and several other authors. I found support materials like from the California Department of Education that I've linked to in our Canvas, our student system and such. So I've been intentional in trying to provide those supports online. And then looking ahead to the future a little bit, I suspect that my relationship with KCSOS will be growing stronger because they are the main provider of the induction program in our community. And I expect that if we have candidates that move into induction, I'm more than happy to work with KCSOS in incorporating ideas or letting them attend, any of those candidates attend events that we're already having, such as the peer review meetings. And then finally, any other issues? I would just, again, be very careful about the CTC's acceptable support policy. There are certain things you're allowed to do and not allowed to do, which is frustrating in a way, but it's also really good because it's a little bit liberating. Like, I'm not responsible for the candidate's performance assessment. And it also provides some pretty clear guidelines. Like, we don't want the graduate school version of the parent doing the kid's science project, you know, in this. So it does help us some guidelines in terms of where our responsibility lies and where it doesn't lie. And I find that very liberating, actually, ultimately. And I also mentioned the Cal APA using it as a curriculum, not just an assessment. I haven't found any better point-by-point breakdown of some of the essential leadership skills and content within the Cal APA. And so using it as a curriculum, I think, is really good. And finally, as a former principal myself, I really, truly believe that the 3 skills and 1 underlying value, data analysis, facilitating a small group, and coaching for instructional improvement, if you can't do those, you really don't belong in the front office. There's a lot more to being a principal, but that's really core. And so I have really bought into the Cal APA. I believe in it. And I think its underlying value of equity and making sure that we're serving all of our shareholders, all of our stakeholders within our communities is a valuable ethical and moral purpose to be working towards. And so with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to, I think Melody is next.
If I can get to my unmute button. Good afternoon, y'all. It's so nice to see everybody. And I'll just apologize ahead of time for any of you that have heard me speak before. I haven't discovered or invented or done anything super new in the last few months. I'm just working closely with my candidates to keep them above water, for sure. As Gay mentioned, I work for the Placer County Office of Education, Director of Leadership and Learning Collaborative. So I oversee both the PASC and the CASC programs. And in the current world that we're in, I see that to be a huge advantage, being so, highly immersed in both, that I have a very strong sense of some of those CASC candidates when they're coming to us from outside our program of what kind of support they might need as they complete their assessment. Piggybacking off of what Mike said, I really think, I too believe very strongly in the Cal APA. It's probably something that I preach on a regular basis to my poor candidates, that this is not just a drill. This is not just let's see what these folks can do in the broad area of leadership. But I try to explain to them that after 13 years as a school site principal, I engaged in these 3 areas of leadership every single day of my career. At some level or at some capacity, leadership, collaborative work, and coaching They were just a part of my tool belt that I accessed every single day. And so that the practice that we're putting them into really is worth their effort, their focus, and their buy-in. And even further than buy-in, I really try to move my candidates into, they have to believe in this work if they're going to make an impact on school sites and in education today. So that's really why we continue to provide that support when they're moving into the CASC program and have not yet completed it. It's not, oh, well, they missed the opportunity. It's like, oh my gosh, now this becomes even more important because these folks are in administrative positions and they are going to be asked to engage in these 3 areas. And they haven't yet had the opportunity to really practice and reflect and collaborate with others about it, right? We've just kind of thrown them into it based on circumstance. So that's really kind of the why we believe it to be so very important. Not unlike a lot of programs, at least for this school year, we only have 2 CASC candidates that have not completed their Cal APA. I do predict, even though I don't believe in crystal balls, that it's going to be exponentially a lot bigger. As I look at my own cohort of 34 candidates in the PASC program, and how many of them I don't foresee finishing all 3 cycles within this school year. So not unlike my colleagues that have spoken today, we typically have them on a very regimented schedule and with due dates of when you will turn and submit your cycle in, with the way we support our candidates in the PASC program, and it's spilling over into the CASC program, is we run something called learning labs. And the learning labs are designed by cycle, and there are usually 3 within a cycle. The team comes together and we do very similar activities as Mike mentioned, where we do peer feedback, peer review. We go through an exemplar. In fact, we go through several exemplars together using the checklists, using the peer feedback forms. And I'll talk about some of those tools that I will share with you in the session materials folder today. But just getting them really versed in seeing how things are unfolding within the cycle and the elements that they can identify that they need to in their practice. And so what we found this year is that I was literally going to start losing candidates left and right if I put these hard due dates in. And when I say hard, it's here's what we're aiming for, gang. Here's what we're going to try to all submit. Last year, within about 85%, all of my candidates stayed on schedule, which I was really impressed with. This year, completely different story. I mean, I think I'm doing, and rightfully so, I'm dabbing a lot more tears, and I'm doing a lot more side hugs, virtual side hugs, as I'm trying to get folks to balance the ever-changing dynamics of their learning environment and continue in this program. So I've had to really release dates, and that's probably to my detriment because I'm all over the board supporting people in all different areas of the cycles right now. Technically, by design, our learning labs have completed cycle 3. We do our 3-1-2, and of my 34 candidates, only 6 have turned in cycle 3. So that tells you right now, it's like, whoo, now I'm doing multitasking. I'm doing 3 and 1 at the same time. We have introduced cycle 1, which we do in a learning lab. And I have a learning lab tonight, and those that are ready to come to discuss, to go through an exemplar, to have peers and myself review their work, that's what we do in a learning lab session. To compensate for the really huge change in the structure of how we support them in their Cal APA assessment, I've gone from offering 5 learning labs, 6 learning labs during the year, to literally tripling the amount of learning labs. So instead of 3 in a cycle, I'm offering anywhere from 6 to 8. And they are required to attend X amount of learning labs so that I can ensure that they are, doing the best they can to stay on course or to get their questions answered or to have me see something. But I've also incorporated office hours twice a week for 2 hours in the afternoons where they can come and get one-on-one support and feedback from me. And we go over the acceptable support so they understand why 98% of what I do is ask them questions. But I also teach them at that time how to use the tools that I have provided for them to really make sure that they're hitting all the components. So what I predict based on this is that we will end this cohort with a large number, that if they take administrative positions, we will have a much larger group that need to complete the Cal APA in the upcoming year. And we'll cross that as we go. I mean, it's just nature of the beast right now. We align our Cal APA cycles to our coursework. We are in partnership with Brandman University for the master's portion. So our candidates come to us first, they complete their credentialing process, and then if they don't have a master's or they choose to go on for a master's program, then in that relationship, they go to the second year with Brandman to complete their master's in educational leadership. So for me, I really can focus on not only the program standards, but incorporating the Cal APA cycles with that. And so we align our coursework and the content with how we roll them out. However, with everything going on this year, again, like these are all lessons learned. Like if y'all haven't figured out by now, I'm super transparent. I'm going to tell you not everything is working. Not everything is working. And I am building the plane in the sky right now. And thankfully we are still like our little horizon thing in the cockpit. My brother's an airline pilot, so I know all the technical terms. The little horizon thing, I'm still like on the horizon, like I'm doing well. Every once in a while, we take a little dip and we figure it out. And I tell my candidates, I'm doing this with you. We're doing this together, and I'm going to be with you 100% of the way. And when the time comes at the end of our coursework and you're not done, guess what? Super exciting. You're going to stay with me. And I'm going to make sure that you're included in every learning lab. You can come to any office hours you want, but until we see this process through, you're a part of our team. And I think just having candidates both in PASC and CASC realize that nobody's going to just cut them loose at the end of the program, dates. That's really been kind of a saving grace. My CASC candidates, my two that have not finished, they have the learning lab schedule. They are invited to every learning lab as well as all office hours. In addition to that, though, I reach out to them a minimum of once a month and I check in because I'm not their CASC coach. I am their Cal APA coach. I can't say I'm going to do that next year because I can't coach. I can't be that Cal APA coach for X amount of folks, more than likely. But I do have a couple of folks in training with me so that they can help support that piece of it. So, and I do, those CASC candidates, they come to office hours, they come to our learning labs, they reach out to me, I set separate appointments with them. And our goal is to get them through it year one. They are obviously not required to do that. I leave that on them as to what is this going to look like for you. We're going to let you substitute one of your IIPs, your individual induction plan projects, with your Cal APA. So we're not going to add to your list, right? But what does that look like for you? Do you want to get your feet wet first? Do you want to, what does that look like for you? And in most cases, they want to get started. I will tell you, they're slowing the boat a little. Like they're realizing this is hard with everything else they're trying to learn. So it's a work in progress. But as I really think the key and the ethical and the integrity piece for me is I'm not going to let go of them. My team's not going to let go of them. Their faculty is not going to let go of them because we want to see them successfully not only complete the program, but successfully engage in the learning, because what they're going to take from the assessment will truly benefit them as they continue through their journey. So is there anything else, Gay, you wanted me to touch on? Are you there, Gay? I will say really quickly, in the materials folder for this session, I've created 3 folders: cycle 1, cycle 2, cycle 3. These are tools and supports that I have created based on the assessment guide to support candidates in their journey. So there's a peer reflection form that's geared off of the number 3 on the rubrics for peers to give very, very explicit and pointed feedback that I can't give necessarily. I also teach the candidates to use the peer reflection form themselves, like be their own peer as they're going through their initial kind of overview of something they're getting ready to submit. There is an actual checkoff list for each of the 3 cycles there, so they can literally go through each and every step, every prompt, and check off to make sure that they have not forgotten something. So something like the minutes and agendas and things we don't want them to forget to include in their submission. For cycle 3, there is quite a bit of materials in there, as we know that a lot of these folks have not had instructional coaching before. And I'm utilizing these same tools with my CASC candidates. Giving them sentence stems, giving them forms that they can use if they don't have an observation form, if they don't have a note-taking form after they finish an observation. These are all optional things for them, but it's to help guide them to not miss any of the components. And so I've provided all of those tools for you all to have access to. Take them, change them, do whatever you want. But I look at it, these are all of our candidates. We want all administrators in the state of California to be successful. And so whatever we can share and provide to each other, I think is just really helpful.
Even though I was still muted, you read my mind very well. I was going to say, did you talk about what you would put in the presenter folder? So we got that just fine. Danielle asked in the chat, where do we access those resources? So I put the link in there, and this is session D3. You will find a spot for all of the sessions, including the opening session. Someone asked if they could have Dr. Sandy's slides from this morning because they liked the quotes and things. So that is available now as well. So thanks. Any other great ideas, let us know. Melody, I have a question for you while the rest of them are thinking about it. Have you adjusted to your time thinking for these candidates at all as you have gone on? Have you slowed down what you expected to do or accelerated it either way?
Well, I'm pretty aggressive when it comes to how they turn in their cycles. I was talking with one of your colleagues, Gay, and they're like, wow, Mel, I don't know if I want to be in your program. You're kind of mean. But typically we asked, we start the very 1st of August, and in previous years, we've had them have their cycle 3 completed by about the 1st week of October. And then we want their cycle cycle 1 completed by about the 1st or 2nd week of February, and then cycle 2 by about the 1st week of May. That gives us a chance for resubmits and all of those good things. I've had to slow it way down, like to the point where I've taken the suggested due dates off of the schedule because it was creating so much anxiety. And I do about every month, I send out a Google form that asks for a quick update as to where they are in the process so that I can then take a step back and design mini learning labs for people that are about the same place so I can hit targeted needs during those office hours or learning labs.
The other thing you mentioned that has been become prolific at the CTC is the effective office hours. And we have found that to be such a pressure cooker release valve that just that they know they can reach out and talk to someone who knows what they should be doing. And it might be a question that's this big or a huge question, but right. To know there is that release valve, that safety valve for them has been very helpful. I think you've probably found the same.
Yeah. And I also find that I strategically put one of my office hours in the afternoon, right after I have met with Gay and team in the morning for my office hours. So I bring my questions that they asked earlier in the week. I go through my questions with the CTC team, and then they come back into office hours on that Thursday afternoon. And I'm like, I've got all your answers for you. And they think, A, I'm wonderful. But B, that it's just it's a great system because they get very quick response to the things that are causing them angst.
We have about 5 minutes left. We would love to hear some of the thoughts from people in the audience as well. If you, we invite you to unmute yourself and share or raise your hand to be called upon, or if you want, put it in the chat. But what are some of your thoughts around supporting preliminary needs in a CASC program? Kalpana, you came on board and unmuted yourself. Are you ready, poised to say something?
I'm sorry, I was just going to say thank you, but that's it. One of the things that I found, and I think some of you already said this, is that we see, and we have both PASC and CASC programs. So a lot of our PASC candidates go directly into CASC program if they have not, if they have an admin position at the end of their PASC. This year, we had a considerable number of people who did not complete the 3 cycles, and they needed that additional support. And that, and now we find that, especially with the distance learning, a lot of our PASC students are leaving program in the middle of the program because they feel like the Cal APA is just like the last straw, and they just can't handle that pressure. But besides offering all the supports that you're offering, and we have those, most of those too, what's one thing that we can do to keep them in the program and keep them motivated and keep them going? How do we coach them to say there is a light at the end of the tunnel?
They're all thinking very hard.
I had a candidate drop yesterday, just said, yeah, I got to check out on this. I kind of look at it though, 1 out of 34, I'm feeling pretty good about that. At this point, I thought it was going to be a lot more. But I will just quickly say that I have spent a lot of time, very opposite of my message last year, of take a breath. You've got 5 years. You've got 5 years. You've got 5 years. Do I want you to take 5 years? Absolutely not. Do I want to get you through as much of this as I can this year? Absolutely. But know this, we're going to end this year. You're going to have your coursework done. And if that's when you need to start really taking a look at it, then we'll be here to support you with more learning labs. You can come to the Cal APA orientation again. I'm trying to give them all of this kind of this little boost of, I get it. This is not normal. This is not going to be normal for a while. So we're going to have to adjust as well.
I echo Melody. I had a past participant leave the program last week, and I spoke to this candidate. I had the instructor who happened to be from the same district as this candidate speak to the this participant. It was interesting when you really peeled the onion back. It was a lot of Zoom exhaustion. And I was surprised. Melody, I see you nodding your head. I was thinking it was Cal APA, but it was Zoom exhaustion. And so we're hoping, he says he's leaving the program, but I haven't started the process yet. I'm giving it a couple more days, and then we'll follow back up with him this week, because I am hoping to keep him in the program. But that's new for me. We've been very lucky. We have had very, very, very few people leave our program midway through. So sad to see it, but giving them a lot of phone calls, a lot of, I try not to Zoom anymore, but a lot of, as you said, Melody, the hugs through the camera. It's a lot of hand holding this year. A lot of the time during the week is supporting these, just their SEL level. So.
Yeah, it's been mentioned already, but as I've had some of these conversations, and our dropout rate is very, very small as well. But I've got 2, one just got diagnosed with COVID. I'm meeting with her about a couple hours from now. The word flexibility keeps coming back to my mind. A little bit of background. Last year, I introduced the field experience as an asynchronous course. And like timelines are flexible and everything, and a lot of the candidates last year took that to mean they could do like whatever they wanted whenever they wanted, and it didn't work out very well for me. Like formative things they were turning in at the last minute, so the benefits of the formative weren't there. So this year I took a very different approach, where I said, all right, here are your deadlines, and if they don't hit the deadline, I put a 0 in the book with a note. I put a 0 to emphasize it's not there. Please reach out to me if there are extenuating circumstances, because in reality, I'm still doing it as an asynchronous course, but it's on an individualized basis. I'm essentially creating IEPs, to plagiarize a term from K-12, as the need arises for individual candidates to provide flexibility on deadlines or provide extra support as needed.
And Danielle also concurs, put a thought in the chat room, as did Nancy, talking about the SEL needs of our candidates and guilt factors, things like that. One of the things that both Mike and Melody said were they have made the Cal APA the curriculum, not an overlay upon what we've always done or my favorite capstone project, but becoming the curriculum helps them a little bit, I would hope.
Mm-hmm. One of the ways that we've been able to support our candidates is structurally, each of our supervisors works with a small group, 10 students. And those groups become very supportive of each other. So maybe if your program doesn't have a smaller group of students working together than classroom size, you could create some smaller groups so they get some of that SEL support from their peers in smaller groups. And that seems to help greatly.
I would agree, Dede. And we created those this year. We call them ICPs, independent communities of practice, but they're like their little miniature families within our cohort this year. And they have, they need to meet twice during each course. But I tell them, that's your time. Take whatever you're working on with your Cal APA, take it to your ICP meeting, read it together, go through it together, talk to each other about it. And I'm starting to hear from a lot of them, because that's a new piece for us this year, that they're like, oh my gosh, I love my ICP group. Mm-hmm. I love my ICP group, because it's somebody that can relate to what they're going through, right? Yeah. So I agree with you, Dede, wholeheartedly.
And to add to what Melody said, we have online communities for each course. We have not only what used to be our face-to-face Saturdays, but we also have online scenarios and communities that come together for our online scenarios and article chats. And we have an assigned CASP or assigned online principal coach. And those groups, and they change every course. So it's kind of a new group every course. And we're hearing that that community of practice, they are getting together as well individually as a group to do that peer review of the Cal APAs and to provide extra support. So I agree with the smaller groups, Dede. That's been helpful for our program as well. We're talking prelim, right. Not really.
Well, we have kept you 3 minutes over our allotted time, so I apologize for cutting into your break time. I hope you have enough time to stand up, walk around the room, walk around the house, walk around the block, and grab something nice to drink. The wind's picking up here. I don't know about where you live, but we're back to Santa Ana winds. So thank you very much for attending the session, and thank you very much to our 3 speakers. Really a lot. And if you would like the materials, they are in that shared folder. And this recording will be posted by the middle of December. Thank you all.
Thank you.